So we've been hearing a little bit about a wish to be more grounded in the practice. And of course, we've been looking at the hindrances. So today we'll be talking about overcoming restlessness. And I think we'll start with some meditation. Because after all, um, these hindrances are as we all know, the big barriers to that groundedness and the stillness that we all very much want. But sometimes we don't know how to address the things that are happening in our life or the things that are happening in our minds or those habits that have been coming along with us for all of our life or maybe for lifetimes. And as some people mention, coming together, even though we're online, can be a big help in being able to direct the mind and stick with that point of focus, that object of meditation, that encouragement, doing it together. So let's start by really getting a sense of how the body is doing. And the great Thai masters are very focused on contemplation of the body, feeling what's happening in the body, how its posture is and how it's working, and the nature of the body being such that we're never, well, almost never completely comfortable in it. There's likely to be some part that feels a little uncomfortable, or maybe we have to deal with a pretty significant amount of discomfort sometimes. But we bring our attention to it, to whatever that body is feeling. We can make adjustments to our posture in the beginning here before we actually settle the mind, and do what we can to help the body feel stable and tranquil. We use the breath as a meditation object. We can also follow the breath as it goes into the body and spreads through the body. And this can be a very helpful grounding mechanism. And when we exhale, we can let go of some tension, that intention in the mind, to calm the body when we breathe in, and to let go of any tension or stress as we breathe out can really help bring some relaxation, some ease, some joy. And sometimes the meditation instructions are to not immediately start using the breath. You have to see what actually works for you. For myself, I immediately go to the breath because that's how my mind has been trained to become calm, to become happy, content, focused. bringing my attention to the breath helps to let go of all of the other distractions. But if that's not your experience, then you may want to give it a bit more time. Letting the breath come to you is one way to think of it. This is a process of becoming still, of setting aside whatever might be agitating, distracting, impinging, and to really allow a spaciousness to occur in mind and a softness, fullness, peacefulness, tranquility to come to the body. You can gently but firmly attend to each in-breath and each out-breath. And also be aware of your whole body. Notice any pleasant feelings arising in the body. Maybe some of them are quite subtle, natural result of becoming mindful. And that is what we're doing. We're establishing mindfulness, being present and aware of the breath, of the body. And calming the body. When we become calm, we automatically feel pleasant feelings. And the Buddha encourages us to notice those pleasant feelings because that will help them expand, grow, become more prominent. And you can also notice a sense of groundedness, perhaps. That comes with being attentive to each in-breath and out-breath. And that's really our anchor. It helps hold us steady. And this is a good point at which to spend considerable time letting those pleasant feelings build, maintaining that awareness and attention on the breath. Right now in this meditation, we'll turn our attention to the mind at this point, noticing any activity in the mind. And just having a kind and gentle attitude towards that activity of the mind. No blame or criticism there, just awareness. And an invitation for the mind to become more settled, for that activity to die down, to relax. Ideally, the mind becomes more and more quiet, more and more still, carefully, attentively, happily aware of each in-breath and out-breath. Aware of the state of the mind. Ideally, the body is so tranquil that you don't even notice. It feels very light. And of course, this isn't always what happens in meditation. And when this is not the situation we find ourselves in, then we bring kindness and generosity and determination and skill to addressing those hindrances. So that they won't plague us and interrupt our opportunity to enjoy the meditation and to open up to wisdom. When the hindrances are dissolved or absent, then we really develop the 7 factors of enlightenment. Those enlightenment factors naturally begin to develop or continue to develop and come to fruition. And the meditation becomes so peaceful, so beautiful. And we would like to stay with it for a long time. And the process of meditation itself takes over, and we don't have to do anything. Just observe and enjoy. So welcome back. I'm going to say a few words about restlessness, and then we can share our stories and our questions and comments. The hindrance of restlessness in the Pali is uddhacca, and the remorse part, so it's two words together, uddhacca, kukucha. Kukucha is the remorse or worry part. So, of course, restlessness, like all the other restlessness and remorse or worry or regret, sometimes it's translated as, like the other hindrances, weaken wisdom, prevent us from really getting still and grounded and being happy. And as with the other hindrances we've looked at, we want to look at how they show up in our life, off the cushion, and as well as when we meditate, because what we're doing in our non-meditating time has a big impact on what happens when we sit down to meditate. So restlessness, I think, is an incredibly common experience, and I personally feel like it's getting harder to avoid. And I think a lot of it has to do with having so much stimulation in our life. So we have a lot going on, many of us, and we have a lot of input from media. We've got right at the fingertips, we can see the whole world. And that's a pretty different experience than, say, back in agrarian society, where all you really were impacted by was what was happening in your own village or maybe even in your family. And of course, that's enough. Restlessness didn't start with the modern age of technology. It's happening forever for human beings because there's always so much to look after just to maintain life. However, we want to be even a little more meticulous, I think, or at least pay attention to how what we see, hear, taste, touch, smell, etc., affects our level of restlessness in the mind. And it's, of course, the reality is that we're never going to be able to be completely comfortable or completely without things to worry about or think about or have to do. So we have to train ourselves in putting things down, and to some degree in being able to endure a certain amount of physical discomfort, for example. Or even, we may have some problem we want to solve or need to solve, and learning how to set it down for the time that we meditate. And it actually helps a lot to practice setting it down for times when we are just going for a walk or doing other things. If we're doing a task that doesn't really require much thinking, maybe we can put down the thinking and do less multitasking. And so it's part of what motivates us to try to calm our mind in our daily life is when we really see what a toll it takes on us to have so much stress and constant activity in the mind. I think I've shared with you before, Ajahn Ganha talked about the necessity to quiet the mind, to not have it working all the time. And he said it's like an airplane that can't land, and it's going to crash. Eventually it'll crash. So to try to consciously, intentionally land the plane or some period of time, even when we're not meditating. It's a great way to train ourselves to be able to become still when we intend to become still. And of course, that's not always easy, even with some training. So we need to take some time to look at what are the things that are actually contributing to this restlessness. And, sometimes we can be, worried, like I said, worried about things. We might be, bringing input, stimulation into the mind that we don't have to have there. Whether that's movies or music or whatever, if it's something that actually uplifts and calms the mind, that can be really helpful, of course, but there are a lot of things that are just very agitating. And those images stay in the mind, or those sounds stay in the mind and keep the mind, kind of revving up. Being over energized, overly excited. When we come to the regret and worry part, then there can be a habit of going over unpleasant memories, or putting a lot of attention on the stories we have, like this is what happened, being more caught up in the content than we are in how our feeling is in it. And I think many of you probably know that a very productive way of dealing with our felt experience, or what causes us to be so agitated or upset or sad or afraid, has to do with the way we think. And we think and we act a lot of times out of how we feel. So when we come back to what the feeling is, regardless of what the presenting cause or proximal cause has been, when we deal with the feeling directly, we can actually bring a sense of peace and calm even to that process. We can sit with something that we feel really hurt by or angry about, and actually have an aspect of the mind that observes be calm and present and caring, which is an interesting experience. It's like we really do see like subject and object there. And when those feelings are held as an object to ourselves, we can then work through them, understand better the underlying cause, maybe a misconception of reality or a misplacement of priorities. Because we're really living this life with the goal of awakening and with the intention to do good in the world. And when we lose sight of that, then we can really get caught up in things that lead us downwards, emotionally, psychologically, or even with our actions. So this is pretty important. And restlessness itself is such a persistent force that the Buddha said it doesn't completely get resolved until we're fully awakened, till we're arahants. Because it just kind of, it's on a very subtle level, perhaps, keeps us moving mentally, internally. So we really benefit a lot from paying attention to this restlessness and remorse, and digging out, okay, what's really behind it for me? Why can't I become still? And let the meditation process kind of take over and carry me. And then, once we do what we can to adjust the the stimulation and input and the activities and mental patterns in our life, and then continue to examine, how this plays out in our practice. So one of the things that we see in some of the suttas is advice to who are, now famous arahants when they weren't arahants yet. And one sutta that talks about this is with Anuruddha. And this, you can find this in, let's see, yes, you can find this in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of Threes, and it's number 130. And what's happening here is, you may have, those of you who study the suttas, you know about Anuruddha. He was the Buddhist cousin. He became an incredibly powerful meditator with great psychic powers and depth of meditation. And before he became an arahant, he went to Venerable Sariputta and he said that, I have this clairvoyance, this psychic power to be able to survey the 10,000-fold world system. Or another translation is like he can survey the entire galaxy. So this is one of the powers that's described that can happen when people develop meditation. And now that we have a telescope that can show us the vastness of the, I don't even know if it can show us the whole vastness, but we're seeing kind of the incredible expanse of what's beyond our own system here. It's pretty amazing that the mind can take all that in as it's developed sometimes. And so he says, I can survey the entire galaxy, and my energy is really roused up and unflagging. My mindfulness is established and lucid. My body is tranquil and undisturbed, and my mind is immersed in samadhi. And yet I'm not enlightened. I still have defilements. Why is that? And the Venerable Sariputta says to him, when you say you have this psychic power to, observe the whole galaxy or the 10,000-fold world system, there's conceit there. And when you talk about how your energy is so strong and unflagging and your mindfulness is established, your body's tranquil, and you're immersed in samadhi, there's restlessness there. And when you say, but my mind's not yet free from the defilements, there's remorse there. And you say, it would be good if you gave up those things, those three things. And instead of focusing on that, apply your mind to the deathless. So he doesn't give like, oh, this is how you deal with conceit. This is how you deal with restlessness. This is how you deal with remorse. He's like, you just turn towards the deathless. Now, that can be a little like, how do you do that? But we find that in another sutta, or in a few other suttas, and one where the Buddha is talking to Ananda, and that one is Anguttara Nikaya 3, so the numerical discourse is 3, number 32. And in that one, the Ananda comes to the Buddha and he says, is it possible that a meditator can have such a state of immersion, such a state of samadhi, that you wouldn't have the ego, no I-making, as one translation is, or wouldn't have possessiveness, you wouldn't think of anything as mine, and the underlying tendency to conceit would be gone. And that you would, with none of those, you could enter and dwell in the full liberation of mind, the liberation of wisdom. And the Buddha says, yeah, that's possible. And Ananda goes, well, how? How do you do it? And the Buddha said, turn your mind to the deathless, basically. This is peaceful. This is sublime. That is the stilling of all activities, the relinquishing of all acquisitions, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. So this is like turning away from all of this and putting the mind on what is sublime, peaceful, and letting go of all those activities and all of those problems we want to solve, relinquishing the sense of ownership of everything, including the khandhas, and noticing this sort of fading away or destruction of craving. Becoming dispassionate, the cessation of all impingement, and the peacefulness of nibbana. And then at the end of that one, there's this little verse. The Buddha says, "This is why I said in the Parayana." So that's in the Sutta Nipata. Having comprehended the highs and lows in the world, one is not perturbed by anything in the world. Peaceful, fumeless, untroubled, wishless. They have, then I say, crossed over birth and old age. So I think this is a valuable contemplation, and just to see where it takes you when you sense the restlessness or the worry. Now, something more to say about worry or regret is that when you see you see this in the suttas, and a number of you have studied this before, where someone is ill and very sick, probably dying, and the Buddha goes to see them. And one of the questions he'll ask is, do you have any regrets or remorse? And they'll say yes. This happens in a few places in the suttas. And the Buddha says, well, is any of that based on ethical misconduct? And they say no. And then whatever it is whatever it is that's causing this regret or remorse, like in one place, this monk says, it's just been such a long time since I was able to come to see you that I regret that. And then the Buddha's like, well, why would you want to see this like rotting body of mine? All you have to do is see the Dhamma, And in another case, the person is like, now that I'm suffering so much this way, I can't go into deep samadhi anymore, and I feel like I'm losing, what I had in the past in terms of the practice. And the Buddha comforts him and says, no, you're not losing anything. It's like, for some people, they equate the success of the holy life with the depths of samadhi, but that's not really the success of the holy life. And even there's a place where the Buddha talks about the qualities and skills that a person should have in order to be a preceptor, or in order to be someone that others will take dependence upon. And one of the qualities is the ability to calm their regret and remorse, to help dispel it. And so I think for us, when we have regret or remorse, we need to learn how to have that skill for ourselves, how to calm it ourselves, how to take a different view and really see the bigger picture around those things that we might regret. You know, what are the causes, the conditions that led us to whatever action we took, and learning from it, not doing that, making that same, I still want to call it a mistake, but it probably is a mistake, you know, but, you know, not doing that same thing again. But for so much of the stuff that we regret, it really isn't worth regretting. You know, it's part of the experience of living a human life. We can bring more kindness and compassion to it. And we would gladly do it for someone else. You know, we could be that dispeller of regret for another person, but can we really do that for ourselves so that we can live peacefully and happily? And then we sit down for meditation, and those depths of calm are much more accessible. So that's what I'd like to say about it. I'm interested in hearing what you think, or what I might have missed, or questions. I know this is really a challenging hindrance, but I also have the complete confidence that we can make progress with it and let it go.
Sounds like your talk was so effective that we've all let go of a lot of our, well, tell me this, tell me that. Thank you.
I hope so.
Mind's blown, stunned into samadhi.
Feel free to go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear something now? Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear Sarana?
Hi.
Yes.
Okay.
They can hear you.
So I think that, but you both know, but yesterday my experience who really let me reflect about restlessness. So yesterday I had the two scariest hours of my life, and I've been in more dangerous situations, but I actually thought I was going to die. So, and it's expectable from a Mexican who has never seen snow. So I was in my kuti like before, a little bit before 3 a.m. and I started hearing, I heard a big tree falling near my kuti. And then something was coming closer and I hit it. And then I started to hear, like, I kept hearing trunks all over the place. Okay. Hi. So it was very distressing. I couldn't really go back to sleep. And I kept hearing, and I was like, okay, anytime, what will happen, like if a big tree falls and crashes the kuti and will crash me too with it. So I was like, okay. I was super scared, super restless, and I think the three things that brought the most distress, or that are some of the outcomes from that experience, because it was like 2 hours trying to meditate, and it was not real meditation. It was like, okay, like if I'm gonna die, like may I die at least trying to practice a little bit, like like bringing out like good stuff, or okay, I'm living a good life. I've been living a good life, like, those things that I normally don't think about because I'm 22, and I'm like, yeah, it kind of sounded like distant, the topic of that. But then I think like the three outcomes were like, first, like how betrayed I felt by the body, because it's like through the senses, what we think, what we taste, what we see, how we can get all that cheap happiness, cheap kind of happiness. And in a way, it's a lot of distress to the mind, all the stimulation. And I was like, yeah, the body is such a betrayer, because now it can just, like, my tongue, my eyes, my nose can be crushed by a big tree. And, all the time I invested in looking for that stimulation, and that happiness is going to go. So I was like, yeah, and then like thinking about the past, like, oh, like what if I did something wrong, and I go to a destination and will have some troubles, my next river. And I was like, okay, this is the outcome of being stuck in the past. And I was like, oh, and I also missed a lot of time thinking about my future, because it's what, as recently ex-college student, they condition you to think about, like your future, your work, your whatever. And he's like, I miss so much time because I can die right now, and then nothing of that really happened. So, I mean, I think those three things, like the trying to look for happiness that comes from the senses, thinking about the past and thinking about the future, like those were the things that get me really restless. And I was like, yeah, I know if I die right now, I'm gonna die with fear, but at least let me die with a little bit of Dhamma in my mind, like. And it was 5, and I didn't see the time. It was the two fastest hours in my life, and then a big thing fell again, and it was rolling and coming. And I was like, okay. And it hit the kuti hard enough to shook it. Like it shook it. And I was like, okay, anything else can fall. But then I saw a light outside my kuti, and it was Ayas. And I was like, it's dangerous. She was like, yeah, let's go. So she saved me. But I was like, how is it that it's already 5 a.m.? It was very intense, but now we are safe, we are okay. But I think I needed to have that experience. I've been in worse situations, but I never feel that scared. So. That's the thing.
By the way, the kuti's okay. The trees that hit were small. The trees that hit were small. It's okay. It just sounds loud and scary.
I'm just Mexican.
No, it's scary. It probably did shake it,
scary.
Because it's boom, but they were small. Nothing's wrong with the kuti either. She's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Sarana. Yeah, as I was heading out to her kuti, it was still dark. But I thought, oh, she's probably awake by now. I think she would have been happy if I had showed up 2 hours earlier, I'm sure. And
yeah, how many times in life do we kind of take chances? It was definitely taking a chance to walk back and forth because of the trees falling. I swear there were more trees down on the road on our way back than there were on the way up. And, but we take chances all the time. We get in the car, it's like, and yeah, we were fine. Karma sometimes protects us too. So it's okay. Linda. Linda Booth.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I already know that a lot of my restlessness does have to do with overstimulation and just trying to look after too many things. And there are times when I'm pretty successful in putting some of it down. And when I do notice the difference. But I always seem to get sucked back in. And hopefully, at least now, I catch it faster, and I pull back a little bit. But I still have a long way to go on this restlessness thing. And the other thing, though, that I notice is whenever there's a talk about restlessness, and I think of it as restlessness and worry and restlessness and remorse, my worry isn't really generally have much to do with the past. It's about the future. And I'm always trying to plan things out and control, not only for myself, but I'm trying to fix things for other people that didn't even ask for my help. And and of course, I catch myself doing that, but it is so ingrained in me. So I was wondering if you might say a few words about that.
Yeah. Well, we can take Anagarika Sarna's story, I think, and look at the time we waste. What about all the time we waste thinking about the future and worrying about things that'll never happen? And one practice that I know sometimes when I say this at a retreat or something, people kind of laugh, but the Buddha wasn't kidding. There is a practice of just, at night before you go to sleep, think this could be my last night. There are all these things that could happen tonight to cause me to die. A tree could fall on your kuti. You never know. And then in the morning when you wake up, you think about all the things that could cause you to die today. And of course, if that becomes something that brings up fear and trepidation, that's not the right way of reflecting on it. But if we think about it as, really, the time I have is right now. Do I really want to spend this moment right now planning for something that's not likely to ever happen? Or what am I planning to protect? I'm trying to protect things that are falling apart anyway. None of my plans for how to protect wealth or health or any of the loved ones in my life, none of that's going to be foolproof. And that's probably why we're scrambling so hard to try to find every possible way to put every possible available protection in place. But we really need to look at that, look at it deeply, so that we let go. The whole practice, the whole thing is about letting go of possessions, letting go of, safety, because there isn't any. I mean, you still do the practical things that make sense. But if we think like this, if we reflect like this, not only are we likely to waste less time and be less pulled in to worries, but we're also likely to have insight arise that really brings about the clarity that doesn't get reversed. The clarity that we can't own anything. We can't preserve anything. We can't really safeguard anything. Not really.
Thank you.
And I'm curious, Linda, when you said, you're welcome. I'm curious that when you said that you catch yourself with restlessness and then you pull back from that and it helps, what do you do exactly?
Well, when I was referring to that, I was referring to just the stimulation, and well, for instance, noticed that whenever I was on the computer and I saw that there were new email messages, I checked them. And then, of course, email messages often involve things people want or questions you need answered. And so for a while, I stopped that, and I set up a time to just look at emails, and the rest of the time I didn't. But lately, I've been looking at the emails whenever again, and it just adds, this busyness to my life, and then there's more things I have to think about. As far as meditation, I choose to meditate almost immediately after I get up, and one of the reasons I do it is because I haven't looked at any media yet, and so I'm much more likely to be settled. But every once in a while, I look at my phone for some reason. I don't know why. And sure enough, it can be a trigger. And then during that meditation, I'm thinking about whatever it was I looked at. So it's for me, I mean, that aspect of this restlessness issue is really about renunciation. And I mean, there's no question that I've noticed that when I pull back, I'm much more, I'm much less restless and much more available when I do.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And the second thing about worry, I'm not so good about pulling back from that. I get in my mind. It's kind of like solving problems, and I think I like that. I think part of it is I like doing that. I like to solve problems. I get a lot of satisfaction out of it. And yet I know I'm trying to solve all kinds of things that don't need to be solved. And yes, it wastes a lot of time. So maybe I need to focus on that a little bit more. and
yeah, I'm wondering if. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I've said enough.
I'm wondering if you can use the same method, like give yourself a period of time to worry. Like I'm only going to worry from 2 to 3 in the afternoon. Something like that. And the rest of the time when it comes up, just like, no, it's not time for you.
Well, I can certainly try it.
Let us know how it works out. I would love to hear the report.
I notice there's a little resistance to it already, but I'll see what I can do.
My experience is that when there's resistance, I have to make myself do it because I know that's a sure sign.
Yeah, I may have to start with a couple worry periods. I may not be able to go down to just one. No.
Good. Did you want to say something, James? No? Okay. Karen.
Actually, just had a question about meditation and restlessness. I've been following your advice. I've been doing it for a while, actually, just trying to cut back on stimulus, less TV, less music, less books, less, all that kind of stuff, less socializing as well. And, my mindfulness practice is pretty well trying to do it all the time. And so I've been doing this for quite a while. And sometimes I feel like the restlessness is getting worse, not better. But I'm wondering if it's just because I feel like I'm just becoming more sensitive of what's going on in my mind. Anyways, I wanted your comments on that, because that's kind of where I'm at in my practice, trying to slow down the life, make it calmer. And what I'm seeing in connection with doing with that is this level of restlessness that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is possible, that you're noticing it. Oftentimes this happens when we slow down and we start to notice, then it seems like things are worse, but it's actually just that we're seeing it more clearly. However, I also think that you could try a couple of other things at this point. Now that you're seeing it more clearly, you know how detrimental it is. You might want to, I don't know what your meditation object is. Are you generally using mindfulness of breathing?
The breath, yeah. And the body too, quite a bit sometimes. If I'm feeling restless, I'll switch to the body and just feeling sensations, listening to sounds. Sometimes that helps when I'm really restless, but mostly, yeah, the breath.
Another thing you might try, if you're not already doing it, is more Brahma Vihara meditation. So see if really bringing in that the different aspects, particularly metta, and seeing if developing more of a feeling of metta in the body and all around you could be a good way to start to calm the mind. And another possibility is look up that quote about this is peaceful, this is sublime, and that whole section there in Anguttara Nikaya. What did I say? 32 maybe, on where Ananda is talking to the Buddha. And that quote comes up in various places. So really putting the attention on nibbana, on this complete peacefulness. And sometimes just filling the mind with something like that, can help the restlessness fall away. So just those two possibilities, give those a chance, in addition to the benefits that come from reflecting on the body. Yeah. Thank you, Karen. All right. I am very appreciative of everyone's practice and kind attention to these challenges in the practice. So I hope all goes well this week, and next week hopefully we'll be at the meditation center when we talk to you. We have great Wi-Fi. And maybe some folks showing up in person. We'll see. Until then, take care.